Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 131 of the Ad Nauseam podcast. My name is Dr. Jeff Winkle. I'm down here in the bunker, in the vomitorium, once again with my good friend and co-host, Dr. David Noe, sitting there at the other end of the table. How you feeling tonight, Dave?
I'm feeling pretty good, actually.
You came in, I met you in the parking lot, and you were very peppy.
I was pumped.
It was almost too much for me to handle.
I was ready to go.
Yes, you are.
Do you like the working title for this episode?
I do. Don't say it, though.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we got to keep it. It's great.
It's not so good.
It's very good. It's excellent, and that's why we have to. The listener will have to wait to find it on the website.
Okay, well, we'll see about that. Yeah, you're having some troubles tonight, Winkle. Is that right?
I'm dragging a little bit. I think I was just telling you, my dear wife has been very sick, and so I'm trying not to catch what she's got. So I've been sleeping on the couch and watching too much late night bad TV.
The satay, the duvan.
Yeah, exactly.
The divan.
Your legs hanging over the edge.
Oh,
it's
terrible.
Horrible. Yeah.
Finding bits of popcorn and old coins in the cushions.
Right. It reminds me of being in college, and it was just, but not the fun part.
Could they pay you to go back to that?
No way.
No,
not a chance.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear you're struggling.
I'm struggling a little bit, but
right.
I'm gonna do my absolute best to bring it this evening.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're feeling well.
And how am I doing?
I asked you how you were doing.
Did you really?
Yes, and you said you were feeling great.
Okay,
right.
Yeah, I'm doing really well. I got a new business opportunity coming up, and I thought maybe like a piece of it.
Oh, really? What you got going on?
Well, I'm gonna join a pumpkin firm, kind of a fall spice, autumn spice sort of thing.
Okay, all right.
And we're gonna buy and sell pumpkins, and I just thought you might want to get in on the gourd level.
We're doing laugh tracks now.
If you're not going to laugh, I got to get it somewhere.
Oh my God!
Was that so bad?
Oh, I think it's a little hackneyed.
Okay.
Are we that desperate that we have to direct the audience?
Just trying to keep it fresh.
That's all it is.
I think probably the reason you're objecting to the laugh track is it didn't follow one of your puns.
Oh, I think.
Could that be it?
This is your version of "you're just jealous."
That's correct.
Gotcha. Right. Well, I know. Actually, I think about it. I do appreciate it because this play that we're talking about tonight,
right?
Not funny.
Not at all.
Not at all funny.
The only time I thought there might have been a slightly lighthearted moment is when there was the description of Io going along cowhorned. There was a couple phrases like that where I thought, is that possibly being played for laughs?
Man.
Or with the description of Io becoming a cow, does Aeschylus want us to find that moving, maybe?
Oh, man. Oh, man. You're front loading the episode with these, man. The only thing along those same lines that I thought...
Let's get serious.
That might be meant to be somewhat humorous is Ocean's arrival.
Right.
He's in some kind of ridiculous chariot drawn by some four-footed birds, as he says.
Is this Billy Ocean?
Yes, the Caribbean Queen arrives.
Right.
But maybe that is supposed to be kind of over the top and ridiculous. But I don't think Aeschylus. When I think of Aeschylus, I don't think that that guy is a barrel of laughs.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh no, definitely not.
Right.
And Ocean is there for what? Like, is Ocean's 11, 12 lines?
Well, this is going to be hard to get through.
Okay.
Right.
We have no shout out.
We don't.
Primarily because no one would want to be associated with such a show.
Right. But maybe we could promise if we read the shout, we could drop a laugh track.
There you go.
If they
drop it, like get rid of it and not do it again?
No, drop it in there.
Oh, yeah.
Like to respond if they want to have like a humorous shout out.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
so Billy Ocean was a real performer, right?
He was. Yeah, he had a number of kind of big hits in the late 80s.
I get him confused with Billy Idol and Billy Joel. I mean, how many Billies can you have?
It's hard to keep track of your Billies.
Right.
Yes, right. But Billy Ocean, Caribbean Queen. He also had "Get Out of My Dreams, Get Into My Car."
Oh, well, that
right.
he. Is he British?
I think he's Trinidadian.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I should know that.
You should know that.
Yeah. Okay. So no shout out, but we do have an opening quote.
We do,
and probably the audience is wondering. other than stupidity, what is this episode about?
Right. This is part 2 of an episode on Aeschylus' Prometheus Bound.
Correct.
Right. So if you didn't listen to the previous one, a listener, you'll go catch up.
You might want to go back,
Yep.
catch up.
Yep. And so shall I read this opening quote?
I would like this.
All
This is from David Konstan.
Yes, a notable classicist
Yes.
and translator.
And I believe I met him once.
Did you really?
Yes, I don't have a funny story like you with Hugh Lloyd-Jones and the
The upside-down name tag?
upside-down name tag, but I think I met him at the University of Iowa back in the day.
Really? Was he in town speaking?
Yes,
Yeah.
he was a guest lecturer.
Yeah.
Very impressive speaker, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah. So this comes from an article of his called "The Ocean Episode in the Prometheus Bound" from the journal History of Religions way back in 1977.
Wow, it was a long time ago.
Right. So we're going to get to this episode where Ocean, the god Ocean, Oceanos, comes to visit Prometheus Bound. So the whole play is structured about Prometheus. He is chained. He's fixed to the rock
By Hephaestus. And Bia, violence, and Kratos, power.
Right, which we covered last time. And the chorus comes to visit him, and then Ocean comes to visit him, Io comes to visit him, Hermes comes to visit him. So that's kind of the structure of the play.
So it's not bad enough that he's pinned to the Caucasus mountain and suffering that way. He has to put up with an endless string of visitors.
Exactly. All these pop-ins.
That's right.
And Ocean is one of the more puzzling ones.
He's a titan.
He's a titan, right? But critics have kind of struggled to kind of understand why is this scene here, and what is he up to, what's the point of this? And so Konstan writes, the critics have not been kind to Ocean. His character is as a rule not either neglected or disparaged in discussions of the Prometheus Bound. Some, for example, have seen him as a lackey of Zeus, trying to undermine Prometheus's proud resistance against despotism. To others, he has appeared as a kindly but foolish and cowardly figure who serves at best only incidental dramatic functions such as comic relief, an interruption of Prometheus's lengthy monologue, or a foil to set Zeus's tyrannical oppression and the passionate indignation of Prometheus.
Okay.
Set off the passionate indignation. It is acknowledged, to be sure, that Ocean is deftly brought to life with his pompous officiousness and prattle, and thus is rescued from being a mere cardboard character, but this is attributed to Aeschylus' skill and generosity towards his personae, like the watchman in the Agamemnon or the nurse in the Coephary. Ocean is rarely said, however, to serve any larger dramatic purpose.
Okay, now I just have to throw a flag here.
Yeah.
What's the soccer equivalent of throwing a flag?
This is a yellow card.
Cards of different colors, right?
A yellow and then a red card, yes.
Okay, I got to raise a yellow card here.
On Dave Konstan
Yes,
here?
I do.
Okay, please.
Yep. He says, Ocean is deftly brought to life and thus is rescued from being a mere cardboard character. Mm-hmm. Really? Ocean as a cardboard character? I just don't see that.
You don't see it?
No, you don't describe Ocean as a cardboard character.
Well, he's saying he's rescued from being one.
I see.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, it's cardboard, Jeff. It's ocean. It doesn't wash.
I gotcha.
Never mind.
All right.
It's a picky point, but I hate mixed metaphors.
I gotcha. No, I hear you.
The dogs of war have come home to roost. This kind of thing. You've heard this, right?
Right.
Okay.
I gotcha.
But the larger point.
So Konstan goes on to argue that there is a thematic and structural purpose to this episode with Ocean.
Right.
And we'll get to it later. We'll return to his article. But I thought it would be interesting for us to read the scene and talk about the scene, kind of see where we fall, and then we see where Konstan kind of comes out on this.
I think that's a very good approach to this.
Okay, all right.
And something else that struck me that I'd like to keep our eye on as we go through the play.
Yeah.
The first time I read this many, many years ago, I don't think I've ever taught this one in class.
I never taught it either.
No, I don't know why, and now that I think about it, because it's fairly compelling and it's short, which students always love.
Yes.
But the first time I read it, as opposed to now, I am struck by the character of Io, and I'm filled with much more compassion and commiseration for her, and I just wonder what the meaning is. Why include this particular character as a counterpoint to Prometheus?
Right.
This is something Professor Roberts talks about somewhat in her introduction, but I think it's a potentially rich vein of interpretation.
Sure. No, I'm with you. Right. I remember I was part of a graduate seminar where we read this play, and I remember my professor being of the opinion that the figures like Ocean and figures like Io, they are the best way to read them as kind of larger symbols for the bigger groups out there. So Ocean is kind of a stand-in for the gods that Prometheus is up against. Io is a stand-in for humanity writ large.
Oh.
And so I don't know. We can see where this goes.
Potentially, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so as we get into it, Prometheus tells the Oceanids, right? So these are the daughters of Ocean, right? Oceanus. That even so, Zeus will need him.
Yes.
Now, the really only plot device, you might say, or the plot hinge point throughout the entire story is that Prometheus has special knowledge, which Zeus wants to get out of him.
Yes.
But surprisingly little time is spent on that point, I would say.
Right. You're right. It was one of the things that kind of frustrated me, this go around of reading the play, that just the business of Prometheus's foreknowledge, that at times Aeschylus is suggesting, of course, that's the ace up his sleeve, right?
Right.
He knows what's going to happen and Zeus doesn't. So Zeus is time bound and Prometheus in many ways is not. But there were also places in the play that I thought that Prometheus seems to be limited in his knowledge, and it also kind of drained some of the drama for me. In that, if Prometheus knows exactly what's going to happen, he's suffering terribly, but he knows how it's going to end.
Yeah,
it kind of robs it for me a little bit of its drama, of its punch.
That's not very Greek.
I'm not saying this. I'm just saying how I'm reading it.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
I expected you to read it in a Greek way.
Okay. Well,
if you know there's some approaching dread,
yes,
knowing that it's coming makes it not so bad.
No, I'm talking about like Prometheus knows that his suffering is going to end. Right?
But that brings him no relief, you're saying.
Well, it should bring him some relief, right? I'm saying that he.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, why should we sob with Prometheus?
Right.
If we know that he knows is that this is simply temporary.
Yeah.
Right. I think that if this were if the threat was like this is Prometheus suffering for eternity, that is a dread worth dreading.
Yes. So here I'm going to bring out the E word again.
Okay.
And it's not exciting, it's existential.
Okay.
Because in the moment, it is an existential crisis. The pain is so intense and it's so unjust that even though he will eventually be released from it 10,000 years from now, that has nothing to do with the intensity of the moment.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
We're sounding like opposites of each other now. I'm sounding Winkelian, and you're sounding like me.
I think one of the nice tensions in the play is that we're kind of getting ahead of things, but when the Oceanids they press Prometheus, like, well, what did you do for humanity?
Right.
And he says, even before he says, I gave them fire, which is the thing that he's most famous for, right?
Right.
He says, I gave them blind hopes, right? I stopped them from seeing
the time of their death.
The time of their death. I stopped them from having the foresight that I have.
Right.
Right. And so that when Io later on begs him, please tell me when or if my sufferings are going to end, and he really hesitates to do so. He says, you don't want to know these kinds of things.
Right.
But at the same time, it would seem that on Prometheus's part, because he has this ace up his sleeve, because he has this knowledge that one day he will be able to kind of call the shots with Zeus, that doesn't bring him any kind of relief.
Right.
Right. And maybe that's just another way of underlining that Prometheus himself kind of wishes that he didn't have the foreknowledge that he has. He sees it as a curse for himself as well.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if I can just develop that a little bit further, perhaps.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Professor Roberts' edition here, and I'm looking at page 14, and she has this really excellent footnote, which taught me something. She says a later version of this story, Prometheus removing from people the knowledge of their time of death, appears in Plato's Gorgias, where Prometheus is said to have prevented humans from foreseeing the time of their death, not out of pity for their condition, but so that they might be more fairly and accurately judged. Isn't that interesting?
That is really interesting.
So I guess the idea is if you know what time you're going to die, you can't be accurately judged because you might decide at the last minute to change the way you've lived.
I guess so.
And then the judge has to count, the last 10 minutes of your life or something. Oh. Whereas if it sneaks up on you as a surprise, you're just kind of caught in the act of whatever good or bad behavior.
Oh, I see.
Is your typical pattern.
Gotcha.
That's how I understood it. Is there another way?
No, I like that. The image that leaps to mind is the story of Constantine waiting until his deathbed to be baptized.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Right. Well, the theological reason is, you got to crack some heads sometimes if you're the Roman emperor.
Exactly.
You don't want to be guilty of that.
Right, exactly. So you save that till the very, very end, right?
Right.
So, no, I had never heard of that interpretation of...
Yeah, it's in the Gorgias. I had overlooked that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that That footnote goes on. So there may be an allusion here to the Pandora story.
Right.
In Hesia, Pandora, given to mortals by the gods, releases all sorts of evil from the jar she brings with it, leaving in it only hope.
Right.
That's really interesting. I mean, that's certainly not the vibe I get from this play.
No.
I mean, he does talk about the pity that he has for mortals.
Yes.
Right?
The one dominant theme is Prometheus is being unjustly punished.
Yes.
And he's being unjustly punished for doing something good for human beings.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think it in some ways is the easiest play to summarize in terms of meaning.
Yeah.
After reading the Agamemnon of Aeschylus, what's it about? In terms of deep issues, it's an absolutely riveting and fascinating play.
Yeah.
But what is it about?
I like the Agamemnon in that we have the other two parts of the trilogy.
Yes.
So if you see the kind of the first play as part of a whole,
Right.
I mean, that makes it better. But you're right. As a standalone play, what is going on there?
There's all kinds of important moral themes, right? Adultery, betrayal, knowledge, how vexing the marriage is between Agamemnon and Clytemnestra. So he's officially the villain, but she's far more wicked.
Right.
And so appearances are deceiving.
Right.
Or you think about Oedipus Rex. Mm-hmm. After teaching Oedipus Rex many, many, many times and studying it pretty deeply, I feel like I'm able to articulate the main points and issues to the students when we talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's not like this. I mean, this Prometheus Bound seems so straightforward.
Right, exactly. So Prometheus is suffering unjustly, and then also a theme that really starts cropping up in the first third, and then throughout is the business of necessity.
Right.
Necessity is the deity at which every knee must
That's
bow. Right.
There's no escape.
There's no escape from necessity. I mean, that's also in the Agamemnon too, right?
Yes.
He said Agamemnon put his neck in the strap of necessity when he decided to kill Iphigenia.
Right. Ananke.
Right.
But again, for a point of comparison, think of Euripides Hippolytus, right, where the young man refuses to worship Aphrodite. He worships only Artemis.
Yes.
So the idea is self-control and abstention from pleasure generally has to have a limit. You know, don't overdo that or it too becomes destructive.
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty easy conclusion to draw, but... So maybe I guess that's a little bit like Prometheus Bound.
Yeah.
I guess the point I'm simply making is that other plays of Aeschylus seem like they're more complicated.
Yeah,
Thematically.
I would definitely agree with that. Yes. Yeah.
And this is not an inside original to me. It's just it stands out when we start thinking about the themes.
Is that something that would maybe cause you to think that maybe this isn't Aeschylean?
I don't have the capacity to say that.
Okay.
We'd have to examine a lot of other details.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, if you asked a student, right, you're signing this on an essay, and let's say they read, one from Aeschylus, Prometheus Bound, one from Sophocles, they read Oedipus at Colonus. What in the world does that play about, right? And they read Euripides Bacchae, and you say, summarize these plays. Well, the easiest one to summarize is Prometheus Bound.
Yeah.
The other two, much more complex in terms of theme.
Right. Yeah. Let's get back into the text here. So we're kind of jumping ahead of things.
Yeah, that's okay.
So
the chorus arrives.
The chorus arrives,
Right.
The daughters of Ocean, and I like this chorus. They stick with Prometheus to the very bitter end.
Yes.
They don't abandon him, right? They do what choruses do. They weep and wail, and they wring their hands.
They dance.
They
strophe and antistrophe.
Exactly, with the best of them.
That's correct.
Right, and they worry and they wonder and they.
Should we define those terms just in case there are some folks out in the audience? What in the world is a strophe?
A strophe is a turn, and then
Right.
antistrophe is a turn in the other direction.
Right. So at some point, the chorus divides up into a dyad and sings back and forth to each other.
Right. So there's a lot with tragedy. There's a lot, visually and sonically that we don't know.
Right.
But there's face paintings and such.
That's right.
And
we also have something called a didascalia, which are kind of show notes.
Right.
In places, comments on the manuscripts as to how these may have been performed.
Right.
There's a lot of speculation, a lot of uncertainty as to how reliable they are.
Yeah. I mean, even in some of the manuscripts too, it's unclear who's saying what.
Right.
So you'll see in different translations that some lines are credited to different characters and
Right.
such. And so it's not, I mean, it's not, at the end of the day, I don't think it's a huge deal. But there are questions about, there's a lot of questions about what tragedy looked and sounded like. And there's only so much you can take from the page. Yeah.
Absolutely. So when the chorus first appears, right, Would you say Prometheus is optimistic?
It's as optimistic as he gets, right?
Okay.
I wouldn't say that Prometheus is. He's not. He doesn't look on the sunny side of things.
He's more of a liver half empty kind of guy.
Right. Exactly. Right. So I mean, there is. I mean, I read it early on when he's talking about that. Eventually Zeus will come around because he knows eventually Zeus will come around. And he seems to be actually kind of almost relaxed. I think in thinking about his own future, I think he's kind of just delighted to have some company.
Yes.
Right. He's
despite the fact that it's a pop in.
It's a pop in, right? Exactly. Right. They just showed on up without an invite.
Right.
But he does seem to be. He seems to be warmed by their presence,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the fact that compared to Ocean, compared to Io, certainly compared to Hermes. The daughters of Ocean seem to have genuine concern, compassion for him.
They're sweet.
Right.
Yeah. So do you want me to indulge in a number of ocean-related puns when the chorus shows up?
Bring it on,
Okay.
please. Yes.
Now, we'll wait for later.
Okay. All right, Dave. One of the things that I really like about Greek tragedy, especially when I was a student new to it, is that it very often will kind of fill in all the background that you need.
Right.
I mean, there's some assumed knowledge, but a lot of the tragedies will give you the backstory.
Right.
And so early on, Prometheus, he tells the story to the Oceanids. They want to know, right? Throughout the play, they want to know.
What are you doing here?
What are you doing here? What's going on? And so he fills them in on the background. And would you read some Greek there, starting at line 199?
Sure, I'd love to. So these are, 199 through 204. Mm-hmm. And these are, what are these, trochees, I believe? We got iambic trimeters here.
I'm not sure. I think this is trimeters.
Okay.
Yep.
So, algae namen moikai legain nestintade, algas de sigan pan tache de dus patma, epe takist erxan tadai mones kalu, stasis ten ale loi sin or rothu nata, hoi men thelon tesek balain hedras kronon, hos zeus anas soidethen.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Nicely done. But as you were reading, it also struck me as that I'm sure Aeschylus includes these lines not just to flesh out the story, but as we were talking last time, is that he's probably taking his cue from Hesiod, but he's also doing some different things.
Yes.
And so by
adding into the mix,
right,
some special touches that are not Hesiodic.
Exactly. And so this is a perfect way to tell the audience about where exactly he's coming from.
You're going to read for us some of Professor Roberts' translation of this portion and a little more?
And a little more, yeah. So Prometheus says, "It hurts me to even speak about these things, but it hurts to keep quiet. Misfortune on all sides. Back when the gods first started to get angry and civil war sprang up, one party wanted to unseat Kronos and to throw him out, so Zeus could reign, of course, but others urged the reverse, that Zeus should never rule the gods. I gave the best advice, but failed to persuade the Titans, children of heaven and earth. They despised my wily schemes. They were so sure it would be no trouble to gain power by force. But more than once my mother, Themis, the earth, one being with many names, had given me a prophecy of what would come to be, that strength and force were worthless, and that those superior in trickery would win. But even though I explained this carefully, they didn't think it worth consideration. Of my alternatives, this was the best. To take my mother with me and join Zeus. I was a welcome and willing aid."
Okay, so if I can just pause you there for a minute.
Yeah.
What do you make of this relationship between Prometheus and Themis? Themis, Mother Earth, some special kind of knowledge that she has? This is not really explained in the play, is it?
It's not really. I mean, Themis is associated with oracles, right? And so you find temples and shrines to Themis at both Dodona and Delphi.
Right.
So I think certainly Aeschylus is underlining Prometheus's connection with future knowledge. And I think we noted last time that this is a detail that's not in Hesiod, but I don't think we learned of Prometheus's mother's name in Hesiod. And so,
no.
But Themis comes up a few times in this play.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is just a way to explain why it is that Prometheus has this special knowledge?
I think so, and another way to kind of consider him trustworthy in this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Can you go on then?
Yes. It's through my plans that Tartarus's dark depths conceal the ancient Kronos and his allies. And for my help, the tyrant of the gods has paid me with this wretched recompense. Tyrants are subject to a kind of sickness. They have no trust in family or friends. You ask me at what charge Zeus tortures me? I'll make it clear. As soon as he was seated on his father's throne, he gave each god a gift, sharing out power. But the wretched mortals are valueless to him. And so he wanted to annihilate the entire population and introduced another in its place.
Okay, so if I can interrupt you again.
Yes.
Just to follow the flow of the story here. He's talking about the Titanomachy.
Yes, right.
The battle of the gods and the Titans. Prometheus sided with the gods, which is really contrary, isn't it, to the rest of his kin.
Yes.
And so the deep injustice is, of all the Titans, Prometheus is the only one. His brother Atlas was on the other side, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Prometheus is the only one who had the wisdom and foresight to actually help Zeus, and now he's being punished for his kindness.
Right. Exactly. And finishing up here, no one resisted him except for me. I had the courage. It was I who saved them from being crushed, from going down to Hades. For that I'm bent by agonies like these, painful to suffer, pitiful to see. I pitied mortals, and myself was judged unworthy of pity. Instead, I'm disciplined without mercy, a sight to win Zeus's infamy.
So Prometheus is like the Mr. T of antiquity?
What do you mean? He pities the fool?
Right.
Okay. Right. All right. Now I got some questions here, though.
Okay.
Right.
Tee 'em up.
I think we touched a little bit upon this last time, but the motive for Prometheus is helping of mortals, right? He's often painted as this. We talked about Prometheus as kind of a proto-Christ figure, right? He suffers on behalf of mortals. But why does he pity them out of compassion? Is this just kind of a selfless love for mortals, or is the background to this is that, why did Zeus want to annihilate mortals? Because he saw them as another generation that could potentially rise up and overthrow them. He sees them as a threat.
Right.
And so Prometheus is kind of using also mortals, helping mortals as a way to kind of deal with his rivalry with Zeus. Not so much because he has real compassion for them, but they're just another tool to be used in this back and forth.
But the rivalry with Zeus, it didn't come until after he helped the mortals, right? It was Zeus's decision to destroy the mortals that led to the rivalry, I believe is how the chronology goes.
Okay. All right.
So I think that this is something that's pretty much unexplained in the play. Why does Prometheus have pity on mortals? Because mortals are
Pitiable?
Pitiable. They're pitiful, right?
Yeah.
They are creatures that are contemptuous in some sense in the eyes of the gods.
Yeah.
So maybe this does add a slight layer of interpretive complexity to what I was saying before. It's not simply that Prometheus is being punished so unjustly, but there's some complexity in his character because he loves mortals without explanation.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll take it. Yeah.
Okay, you got another question?
No. I think you kind of adjusting the chronology for me that really helped. But also this detail about how Prometheus tried to persuade his fellow Titans that let's use craftiness, right? Before we kind of break out the spears and such, and they wouldn't listen to him.
Perhaps some credence can be given to your second suggestion. If we remember what you read, tyrants are subject to a kind of sickness. They have no trust in family or friends. Mm-hmm. So maybe Prometheus, with his foresight, is already perceiving Zeus is generally going to be an awful ruler.
Right.
And here's the first instance. He wants to destroy mortals for no good reason.
Okay.
Is that kind of what you were angling at?
Yeah, I guess so. It's that problem of motive. It always strikes me as, I always hear it as a wrong note when I hear Prometheus described as kind of as a Christ figure, because I don't think he really falls into that.
No, there are so many problems with that analysis.
Right, but
there's a definite, what you could call a prima facie, right? A surface kind of comparison. But I think, as we've talked about many times, probably will some more, you dig below the surface, a lot of those similarities, they're not based on much. No, and I think that this is one of them. And so that motive of Prometheus, of why he cares for mortals, is one that's always kind of bugged me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think certainly Aeschylus he's setting up a Prometheus that he wants the audience to pity him and to side with him, right? And so he doesn't want to use brute force. He wants to use his metis, right? And so he's acting like an Odysseus. He's acting like the kind of hero that a Greek might be drawn to. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Do we want to take it in a political direction?
Let's do this. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So one of the ways that this play has been interpreted, mm-hmm. and I think that you mentioned it last time in the previous episode, is as a response to the recent Pisistratid tyranny,
right?
Which was overthrown in Athens at the end of the 6th century, and overwhelmed by now a kind of Themistoclean or Periclean democracy,
right? So
can you say more about that for the sake of the audience?
So as far as interpreting the play is, the question is then was who or what does Zeus represent? And so there's lots of talking that word tyranny is thrown around when describing Zeus's behavior. So what tyranny is Zeus representing? Is Prometheus, or is Aeschylus referring to this huge political upheaval ushered in this experiment with democracy in the very early part of the 5th century BC. I've also I remember my professor in grad school who said, the best interpretation is who do these characters represent? What's the bigger picture?
Okay.
And so
now did he give a justification for that as to why this is the best interpretation?
He may have, but remembering this professor, probably not. He liked to kind of pronounce these fiats from on high.
Okay.
And say this is how you should do it.
Is that how you run a class?
That is not how I run a class.
Okay.
Right? In grad school, I learned mostly kind of what not to do. But I remember him saying that, okay, well, which tyranny? Is he responding to the Pisistrated tyranny? Is he referring to the tyranny of the Persian kings coming in? Is he referring to that kind of political upheaval in the 490s and the 480s?
Right.
And it's an interesting approach. And so I think Aeschylus is definitely, as all tragedians were, they were speaking to the audience in front of them at that time.
Yeah.
And I think the Greeks expected these tragedies to be commenting, to be doing politics as a kind of an extension of what they were doing in the assembly.
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting. So I'd like to pick up on that for a minute, but I just want to give a little more background on something, try to get some dates in people's minds, because I think this is useful. It's helpful review for me.
Yeah.
I think from what I'm reading here, this site, Pisistratus ruled till around 527. Mm-hmm. But then, and it wasn't easy for him to gain the tyranny. There was a lot of conflict with the Achaemenid family. But then after his departure, right, then his two sons, Hippias and Hipparchus, ruled.
That's right.
And this goes to 510. So the earliest date for the composition of this play is what? Maybe 585? Maybe before?
Well, 585 would be way too.
I'm sorry, 485?
Right. I think I was reading 479 is one of the earliest dates.
And the latest, maybe sometime near the time of Aeschylus' death?
Right.
Assuming he's the author?
Yeah, and if he's not the author, maybe some people pushed it even into the 420s.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I think Aeschylus dies 456, I want to say.
Okay.
So if it was 479, would we still be putting on a play talking about events of 30, 40 years prior?
That doesn't seem likely.
I don't know. I don't know.
It's hard to know about how quickly certain things can move out of the public consciousness, you might say.
Right.
Peter Green told me when I was in graduate school that certain persons in parts of Asia still have an oral tradition of Alexander the Great's invasion 2,000 years later. Hard to believe.
It is hard to believe, right?
But apparently it's possible.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing, right? This just talking, it reminds me of how I can easily kind of get stuck into these modes, that the idea that every tragedy was always speaking politics to the audience of the day about that time. And I don't know if that's true. I know what you're saying. I think this is the way that I like to look at it. Maybe it's worth considering, is that the play has to have some immediate application to the audience. Mm-hmm. But so often the themes that the poet is developing, he intends them to be of universal value. Yes, exactly.
And this is really the reason why we're reading them today.
Right.
In other words, if they were so restricted to their time, they wouldn't be interesting. Here's an example.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I guess there was a lot of turmoil in the U.S., maybe just a week ago, in the U.S. Congress. There was, one speaker of the House was pushed out, another was pushed in. There was some office swapping and so forth.
Yeah.
I didn't follow it closely, but I read a couple of articles in the paper. If that were turned into a tragedy 1,000 years from now, it would be of very little interest if it dealt with just the facts of what happened.
Yes.
But if it tried to represent the persons as having in their characters types of, hubris or humility, whatever the types are, then in the hands of a
sufficiently
able poet, maybe not this episode, but something like that.
Yeah.
It could be of enduring interest.
Yes. Right. No, I like that a lot. And so maybe the political moment can be a springboard for telling a much bigger story. So I'm, again, audience, forgive us if we're repeating ourselves, but so when Oedipus the king is first produced, it's on the heels of the plague in Athens, right?
Yes.
And so the play opens in Thebes, but it opens that there's a plague in the city, and this is a problem that needs to be solved.
Right.
That immediate connection it cannot be coincidental.
No.
But
you're saying to the actual historical plague,
exactly,
which decimated Athens. Decimated is the wrong word. It's a third of the population, perhaps, died. 429.
429, exactly. And so that connection to that original audience could not have been missed.
Right.
But that play quickly becomes about much bigger things.
Yes.
It's about, it's about,
knowledge.
It's about knowledge.
Destiny,
it's about,
fate.
It's about, are the gods reliable?
Right.
Are they, how removed are they?
It's about not being able to see, but having a kind of supernatural knowledge that the gods give when you've lost your vision.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So,
but only a really great playwright can do both things.
Yes.
Can connect some contemporaneous event to a theme that has, transgenerational interest.
Right. So I've found that interpretation for this play. I mean, this is just me. That it's interesting. Who does Zeus represent? But for that to be kind of the final word in the play, that makes the play much less interesting for me.
Yes, definitely.
I think it's really interesting to look at this as a piece from a particular historical context, which is always important. But I'm much more interested in questions like we were talking about, the motivation of Prometheus, and the removal of future sight as a gift.
So maybe another point of contrast would be to compare how the characters are treated here to how they're treated in Aristophanes' comedies.
Okay.
So if making fun of a character like Cleisthenes or Cleon, if you make fun of them by name or the parody is too close, right? I mean, it's too obvious, then you have to be all that more talented to make it something of lasting interest.
Yes.
Because nobody's going to care 1,000 years from now, which Republican or Democratic congressman from Wyoming or New Jersey didn't get some particular committee appointment.
Right.
Who cares? I can't imagine. But we're still reading about Cleon and Cleisthenes because even though they're by name, Aristophanes has done something exceptionally brilliant with them.
Exactly. And even Aristophanes, he can get into those weeds. I'm translating his Lysistrata right now. And there are a number of moments where if you look at the commentaries, we say, this is a joke about this person. We have no idea what this means.
Right.
And
well, that's a good thing to remember.
Yeah, maybe it killed him, in 411.
Right.
But I mean, that's not the end of the story. I mean, the Aristophanes commentaries endure because they're much bigger than just those little throwaway jokes.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like parachute pants.
Right? How is it like parachute pants?
Well, because for a moment, that's a funny reference. But 1,000 years from now, that's going to be, in the weeds, kind of.
Exactly.
Nobody's going to know what in the world is this about. Did they find this funny? Did they wear this for,
Were they constantly jumping out of planes
skydiving?
In 1983? Right. Did you have a pair?
No. It's not some kind of a tell-all. But speaking of parachute pants,
yes,
it's time for the ads.
Let's do it. This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by the good folks at Ratio Coffee. Mark Helgwig, that genius, that brewmaster out there in Portland, Oregon, he just keeps doing it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
And so we, for a long time, both of us have been using the Ratio 8. I've had the Ratio 6, these wonderful machines that will last a lifetime. They're making perfect cups of coffee every single morning. And there's exciting news coming down the line. Should we tell them about
the
this?
Ratio 4? Yes, we mentioned it last time. So this is going to have the same technology, the same perfection of brewing that the 6 and 8 are known for, but it's going to have a smaller footprint. It's going to be a little more attainable in its price point. And this thing is going to sell like crazy. It's going to turn Ratio into a household name. I'm pretty sure of this. Like Honda. What are some other household names?
Xerox.
Yeah. We got any others?
Honda and Xerox.
Hydrox. Do you know about Hydrox?
No, what's Hydrox?
It's a Oreo knockoff.
Really?
Those terrible cookies.
like the generic brand?
That's correct. Huggable portions.
That's right.
So Ratio's going to become a household name.
Fantastic. And we can take all the credit when
can.
they explode. Yes.
Right.
Now, Dave, did I see you over there? Were you writing some poetry?
I wrote a little limerick.
Okay.
Yeah, it took me all of 30 seconds to do it, and it's going to show. You ready?
Let's hear it.
Coffee is sometimes quite bitter, like an ugly and scratchy old sweater. The Ratio, however, will never be bested by anything better.
That is not bad.
Well,
for 30 seconds cranking that out.
Except bitter and sweater.
It achieves assonance.
Okay.
Right, okay. Something along those lines.
I think you should watch your language, frankly. This is a family show.
Right. So, listeners, you can take advantage of a great deal we have here at Ad Nauseam. If you go to ratiocoffee.com, that's ARATIO coffee.com, and you want one of these wonderful machines, the 8 or the 6, and then and come
Look out for the 4.
Look out for the 4. Type in this coupon code, ANCOF7.
And the F stands for Fibonacci.
Fibonacci.
And flavorful. But only put one F in there.
Just one.
Just one.
Just one, yes.
ANCOF7. And Jeff, what will they get?
They will get 15% off their entire order.
That's an incredible deal. Please check it out. This episode is also brought to you by the wonderful folks at Hackett Publishing. Hackett Publishing has been with us for 3 years now. Mm-hmm. These folks, they got on board the Ad Nauseam bandwagon. There's an odd image. An Ad Nauseam bandwagon.
Have you ever ridden on a bandwagon?
No.
What is a bandwagon? Is a wagon with a brass band?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, Jeff, that's definitely what's it. With a real long extension cord for the amplifier.
Okay, all right.
They got on the bandwagon 3 years ago, and they said, yes, we want to support a classics-themed podcast. Mm-hmm. We'll get behind you guys. And so they've been sponsoring us for 3 years now. And we're using for this episode the wonderful translation by Professor Deborah Roberts. The previous episode heard her read a little bit of her own translation brilliantly. Mm-hmm. These folks selling fine quality translations and original scholarship for 50-some years, 52 years, I think.
That's right.
Offices in Massachusetts and Indianapolis, Indiana. Jeff, what do you like about Hackett? And your challenge here is you may not speak about the covers.
I can't talk about the covers?
No.
I can talk about their affordability.
You may.
Okay, they're very affordable. They're high quality. The translations. I love about Hackett that they will have several translations of the same work, and so you can sample different styles. We've used a couple of different translations for the Metamorphoses in here.
Yeah, Lombardo and Ambrose.
Yep. And I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about the covers because I love the cover of the Prometheus.
I knew you
Bound.
couldn't resist.
That's right. So
is a cover liminal? You're not quite in the book, but you're not quite out of the book.
I like that. I'll buy that.
You're approaching it.
Yeah. You bring up the word liminal, I'm in.
Okay.
Lost in that middle space.
Or you're at least halfway in.
Halfway in, right. So this cover of Prometheus Bound has that cracked sphere sculpture by Tony Tomato.
Yeah.
Right?
Arnie Tomato.
Arnie Tomato.
The Italian Death Star.
Yeah. And so again, a suggestive image, maybe thinking about the world kind of coming apart at the seams as these gods duke it out. It's great.
It's brilliant.
It's clever. And so, it's...
So let's say one of our... were you finished?
No, I'm good. You guys, go on.
Let's say one of our listeners is saying, I want some nice cover art to line my shelves. I don't want to read the books, but I want to find some really attractive-looking books to put on my shelves. What should they do?
It's very easy. They should go to hackettpublishing.com.
Okay. How many T's in that?
That's HACK... ETT,
okay.
Right? So 2 T's, publishing.com. Find the books that they want, drop them in their grocery basket, and type in this coupon code AN2023.
That's the current year, right?
It is, and that will get them, Dave, what?
20% off their entire order and
free shipping.
Check it out.
All right, Dave, as we get back into it, I want to move past this political point, but there's one or two more things I wanted to say. So I think you said something last time about maybe Aeschylus here is responding to Pericles. Pericles is the tyrant, right? So the quote that you read from Hugh Lloyd-Jones last time said something along the lines that Aeschylus was very skeptical about extreme forms of democracy.
I think that was from Rose.
Was that from Rose? So you're right. Yeah, it was H.J. Rose. And so is he responding to some of these things that have been happening after the Persian Wars?
Yes.
And he's worried about what's happening in Athens. So where do you fall on this? Do you see it kind of one way or the other? Or do you find that it's just not a very helpful line of questioning for kind of understanding this play?
Well, one thing that's always stuck with me, and again, this is from Peter Green, The Greco-Persian Wars. He makes the point that the men with Miltiades who won at Marathon, right? This is in 490, right? They couldn't be shaken from the belief. Maybe it's just the quality of Peter's writing, or maybe he's right about this. I'm not sure. But they couldn't be shaken, the landholding aristocrats, from the belief that anytime they wanted to, 1,000 or 5,000 doughty Athenian hoplites could leave behind their plows, could take up arms, and go beat the Persians anytime they wanted. And that kind of deep conservatism, which characterized the old guard, was a tremendous barrier and hindrance to the development of Themistocles' plans to save the state.
Gotcha.
Through the wooden wall.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm quite conservative, as you know, right? So I don't really have a horse in this race, but in a sense, but I just found Peter Green's description so persuasive that he kind of captured what seemed like the political mood at the time. And when I think about the fact that Aeschylus fought at Marathon, and the huge change in culture, a sea change, right, that came about when all of these Athenians of low birth, you might say, are now made citizens. They're enfranchised by the Themistoclean navy. It starts to gain some credibility. The specific person of Aeschylus, I don't know.
Yes, right.
But it's not implausible that he would be caught up in that.
Yeah.
Especially since we read the part about his epitaph.
Right.
It's all about his service at Marathon.
Right. Yeah.
And I can imagine the resentment that they would have had.
Yes.
About feeling replaced by persons who, previously to them were nobodies.
Yeah.
And now you get to vote. Everybody's voting, right?
Right. No, that's that's interesting. I think that often this story is told too simply, right? The move from tyranny to democracy is kind of this smooth thing, and that and we're just kind of replacing one with the next without talking about how all of the messiness within that. Right? And
a lot of disruption,
yes.
A lot of reorganization, a lot of confiscation. And I'm not saying that, those persons should not have been enfranchised. On the whole, it was probably better. And for sure, Themistocles was brilliant in saving Athens.
Right.
And the old view was benighted.
Yes.
But I can imagine Aeschylus being caught up in it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Yep. I love that we have that detail that he fought at Marathon.
Right.
That does kind of color the way perhaps we read some of these things. Right? And born at Eleusis. He was an Eleusinian.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah.
One of your favorite places.
One of my favorite places.
So the chorus.
Yep. Let's
right?
get back to them. Yep.
They don't seem to see any point in Prometheus' suffering.
Well, the chorus is doing what choruses do. They kind of waver and they wring their hands and they worry about stuff. But they do say to Prometheus, you must have gone too far. I was suggesting like you say you're something unjustly, but you must have done something, right?
Zeus can't be completely arbitrary.
Exactly.
So just swallow a little pride and let it go.
Let it go, right? And so, but of course, Prometheus knows it's not that simple. He knows that this can't happen, and because he can see the end of this thing. Yeah.
So now there is the arrival of Ocean himself.
Yes.
Not just the chorus of his daughters, the Oceanids.
Right.
But now one of the major characters, in addition to Hermes and Io and Hephaestus, a much more major character than Hephaestus. He arrives and has this conversation with Prometheus.
Right.
Right. Is it called the stichomythia?
Yes.
Right. The back and forth.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so this is the guy that our opening quote from Konstan was about, and a character that has puzzled many readers of this play.
Right.
What's he doing here? What's the point of this episode? And so why don't I read a bit of Robert's translation?
Yes, please.
Here? So Ocean shows up and he says, "I have made quite a journey to come to you here, Prometheus, guiding this swift-winged bird not by bridle and bit, but by thought. And I'd have you know that I share your pain. The fact that we're family obliges me to, I believe, and besides, I respect no one more. You may take this as true, since it isn't my way to flatter. Come now, and indicate, please, how I should assist you. You won't say you've a friend more steadfast than Ocean." So he comes off to many readers as kind of a blowhard,
obsequious,
a braggart, right? I remember from this grad seminar, I can't use the phrase my professor used because we're a family show.
Right.
But he says, I'll paraphrase, he says that Ocean shows up in the equivalent of a very large Buick.
Okay.
He comes in honking his horn. Right. And so he's on this chariot with this kind of these ridiculous kind of creatures pulling him in. He comes in for like the show-stopping number from the side of the stage. He's there to make a splash. He's there to be seen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't really get that when reading the play. Did I just miss it?
I don't know. I think that the visuals of it, you have to kind of read into them. Mm-hmm. This particular edition doesn't have a lot of the italics with a lot of the stage directions, which I actually appreciate, right? Because a lot of that stuff is just kind of pulled out of thin air, right. But in those who see, Ocean does mention these birds and at the beginning, at the end, and so he's He's
You're saying he's ostentatious.
He's ostentatious, right? But I mean, that's not the end of the world,
Right.
right? So he goes. He talks to Prometheus, and he says, he presents himself as like, there's a new guy in town.
Right.
He's a Titan,
Meaning
right?
Zeus.
Zeus is the new guy in town, and
Right.
he says to Prometheus, "I'm a Titan. You're a Titan. It's time to get in line."
Right.
And so he's kind of a go along to get along kind of guy. And he says, "Prometheus, if you don't get in line, it's just going to get worse for you." So, but then on top of that, he says, "Listen, I'm a Titan, but I'm in good with the new
Regime.
New regime." And he says, "I'll go and put a good word in for you for Zeus." And he thinks that I can probably persuade him to let you go from this.
Yeah.
And I think we're supposed to see that as ridiculous.
Okay.
Right? And does Ocean really have the ear of the new tyrant?
So it's false comfort.
Yes.
It's like one of Job's friends. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
He shows up and he's supposed to be helping Prometheus, but he makes it worse because he's not sympathetic with Prometheus's purpose.
Right.
And his plan to address the situation is absurd.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And of course, Prometheus sees through it, as Prometheus sees through everything. Yeah, see, this is one of those instances where I find, Prometheus's foreknowledge of ththings distracting.
Okay.
I would much rather have a Prometheus that is reacting to Ocean in the moment and not saying, I know this guy is ridiculous because I know the future and I know that he has no idea what he's talking about.
Right.
Right. But I think that's one of the things, those paradoxes you just have to kind of let go.
Do you have any friends like this, or have you had any friends like this? When you're in a tough or tight spot and along comes Ocean rolling in his Buick and has a lot of worthless advice and pious platitudes?
I wouldn't call them friends, but I've certainly had situations where people will come into difficult situations, clearly making promises to me that I know they can't keep.
Right.
And I know that they're saying to me what they think I want to hear.
Yeah.
But there's no teeth, behind it.
Right. But they call you, they call themselves your friend, right? That's the kicker.
Right.
But you don't agree on that premise.
No, it's a show of, It's a show. It's what the people call virtue signaling.
Right.
Right. I think that's what Ocean's doing. He's virtue signaling. And I think even Ocean, if he were honest, he realizes, no, I can't do any of these kinds of things. But I'm here. I'm going to speak Titan to Titan, and I'm gonna tell this guy what he wants to hear.
Okay. So Prometheus just dismisses him, right? Pretty much out of hand.
Yeah.
Right. He dismisses Ocean without a wave.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Right. And he almost in Robert's translation seems to mock Ocean. He talks about the other Titans that have been punished. He talks about Atlas, on the other side of the world now, and going through his horrible eternal punishment. He seems to be saying to Ocean, listen, you're a Titan too, and even though you might be in the good graces of the new guy right now, you better watch your back.
Right. But a more pointed criticism that Prometheus levels at Ocean is that he is complicit.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
He's complicit in the violence and horrible reign that Zeus is inaugurating.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
He's a kiss-up.
He's a kiss-up, right? And so he actually tells Ocean, you don't know the guy that you're dealing with, and so if I were you, I would get out and save yourself.
Right, because you're becoming an appeaser of tyrants. Mm-hmm. Right, so that's the real slap, it seems to me.
Yeah. Not
just the self-protection, but you're partly to blame for this.
Yes. Right. So, and it's not long after that that Ocean says, looks at his watch and says, I really got to be going. My four-footed birds here are getting restless, and so I'm going to take off. And so it's an abrupt leaving.
Okay.
Almost as if to suggest that he's very uncomfortable with what Prometheus is saying, or maybe even recognizes the truth of what Prometheus is saying.
So can I read this Konstan quote here to kind of make a full circle to what we did?
So this is where Konstan kind of falls on which Ocean he sees, or what he sees the purpose of this episode.
He falls on an ocean?
I'm sorry, I'm mixing metaphors.
That's all right. That's all right. Okay. Konstan says, it is reasonable to conclude that the issue which divides Ocean and Prometheus is not one of principle, but of judgment. Therefore, it is beside the point to accuse Ocean of displaying ill will or a weak will. In his eagerness for the immediate restoration of divine harmony, Ocean telescopes the process of resolution and imagines that it is only Prometheus's attitude that stands in the way. This is a mistake. He is misled, as Prometheus observes, by his light-minded good nature. Now error is corrected by instruction. Accordingly, the image of the schoolmaster is central to the episode. Now, Jeff, let me pause here. Mm-hmm. Help me out. So who's the schoolmaster here? Is Ocean trying to be Prometheus' schoolmaster?
I think so, but then I think Konstan's suggesting that the tables get turned.
Okay.
And that Prometheus is the student becomes the teacher.
Yeah. Is that a kung fu reference?
Is that where that's from?
I don't know.
I've heard that is
David Carradine?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Ocean begins by presenting himself to Prometheus in the role of teacher, didaskaloi, line 322, advising him, as we have seen, to control his outbursts against Zeus in the interests of an early reconciliation. The brunt of Prometheus's reply is contained in his lengthy account of the torments of his brothers Atlas and Typho, which Konstan says I shall examine presently. We talked about that a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Prometheus concludes this argument with an appeal to Ocean's wit and experience, which ought not to require Prometheus for a teacher, didaskalu, line 373. So they exchange pedagogical barbs, you might say.
Yep.
Okay. Ocean is visibly impressed. His way of speaking changes from the long speech full of confident imperatives and pious wisdom to brief and humble questions. What harm do you see in my courage and goodwill? He asks. Teach me, didaskeme, 382. The language underscores the fact that the relationship between Ocean and Prometheus has become reversed, and that Ocean knows it. He is the pupil, appealing to Prometheus as teacher. In the end, fully persuaded of the danger and futility of interceding with Zeus in behalf of Prometheus, Ocean abandons the posture of counselor altogether. Your unfortunate experience, Prometheus, he concedes, will be my teacher. Hey, se Prometheus symphora didaskalos. All the occurrences of teacher and teaching, didaskalos and didaskein, are emphasized and related in the Greek by their uniform position in the last 2 feet of the line.
See, I like this. I mean, I like...
That's a pretty brilliant interpretation.
It is, right? And I love arguments that are rooted in the language.
Absolutely.
Right?
Can you draw out the gist of it? Can you summarize it for us?
Well, I think that he's... so Konstan, I think he's responding to criticism that the episode is meant to be ridiculous.
So you say the episode... Ocean's conversation with Prometheus, some critics say it's absurd.
It's absurd, right? Or even like we were talking about the seeming emptiness of what Ocean is saying, and so critics on that side, and then also the critics on the other side that see Ocean as nothing but kind of a mustache twirling lackey of Zeus.
Okay.
That's just another character coming to berate Prometheus. And Konstan says it's really neither. And I love this interpretation because it humanizes Ocean. Mm-hmm. And Ocean is persuadable in that moment. And through Prometheus's words, which, I mean, Prometheus isn't lashing back at Ocean. He's challenging him.
Right.
But he's not lambasting him as an enemy. And Ocean changes and says, okay, what can I learn here? And he sees that that the example of Prometheus Prometheus is a cautionary tale that he better pay attention to.
Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah. Would you say also that Ocean underwent a kind of sea change?
Well, that's the current way we're looking at it.
Nice. Oh, that seems like a good place to maybe wrap this up, to bring the boat to shore, you might say, and shut this down.
I know you wanted to talk about Io tonight.
I did want to talk about Io.
But that's we're going to have to wait till next time.
Right.
I think there's a lot of really interesting things to say about Io.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. So we're up against it.
Yes.
And before we get out of here, Dave, say a little bit about the Moss method and LLPSI. Would you?
I'd love to. Yep. So if you want to study Greek with me, go to mossmethod.com and check out my program. Module 1 is done. Module 2 is done. Module 3 is almost done.
How many modules will there be?
There'll be 4.
Excellent.
Unless I decide it's more profitable to add others, and then there'll be more.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. There's only 4. Charles Melville Moss wrote this great book called A Greek Reader. And he says, when reading Greek, you should use your mind, not your thumbs. You don't have to spend all your time in the lexicon. Think about the story. Follow the story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the method that we use. So if you've studied little or no Greek before, this is where you can start. I have several students who took Greek in seminary, but either they've kind of, been out for a long time or they want to go deeper, and they have found this program to really, really help them appreciate some of the literary aspects of the Greek language.
Fantastic.
So go to mossmethod.com, check out some of the free lessons and instructional videos. If you like it, sign up, and you can join them office hours every Friday.
And Dave, you can also teach interested learners out there Latin as well, right?
That's correct. So latinperdiem.com/LLPSI, using the very famous book by Hans Orberg, Lingua Latina per se illustrata. And this takes you ab initio, from the ground up, from the very beginning. And it's very important, if you're going to learn a new language, that you start right. You have to have a proper foundation. And like I like to say, I think this is probably the best value for language study. It's not the cheapest. It's not very expensive. There may be other courses that are better. I can't say, but the combination of the two, it's a really excellent value.
And with this one, in the instructional videos, you are teaching.
I'm teaching four live
right?
students.
Yes.
Yep. And so, sometimes being on the spot for Latin is challenging, but if you can watch someone else be on the spot and learn beside them, that can be actually quite entertaining.
Indeed.
And I think it's a good time. So go to latinperdiem.com, check it out, my YouTube channel, almost 2,000 free instructional videos.
Fantastic. Excellent. All right. Hey, big thanks as always to Mishka, our great engineer, who the turnaround time and the sound quality is amazing. So again, many, many thanks to her.
I'd like to thank the guys that provide us the free music, Scott Van Zen and Ken Tamplin, for the intro and outro with the screaming guitar and then the nice bumper music for the ads. Very grateful for their generosity.
Yeah. And hey, if you want to shout out, if you have a question, you have a comment, you have a complaint, you can write to us. Write to Dave@adnauseam.com. Don't forget the V.
Send complaints to Jeff@adnauseam.com. Do not forget the V. You can go to the website and you can check out our Lurch with Merch section if you'd like to get a nice T-shirt that is classically themed. It has this tag on it, Quae nocent docent, from Erasmus. The things that hurt, they teach.
They teach.
Yes.
That's right.
Very nice, attractive black and orange
Yes, and
T-shirt.
and very seasonal colors right
Yes,
now.
they look like orange or maybe sort of like a red figure vase.
Yes.
Very attractive.
Good stuff.
So, Jeff,
Yep.
what's on the agenda for next week?
Next week, we're going to wrap up our look at Prometheus Bound, and I'm looking forward to talking about Io.
Yes, this poor woman turned into a cow who now wanders the world and suffers.
Yes. Yep.
And I guess I want to know, you have the gustatory parting shot?
I do, yes.
Okay.
This comes from comedian Patton Oswalt.
Okay, never heard of him.
I bet you'd recognize him. He's been in a lot of stuff. But he has this bit and talking about kind of the absurdity of various fast food items. And he has this bit talking about the KFC Famous Bowl, which I've never had.
So, but
yes,
the KFC. What is a KFC Famous Bowl?
Is
it a new item?
I think so. But it's one of these things where they basically take all the stuff that KFC makes and just kind of dump it together in a bowl. Right. So this is a quote from one of his bits in the middle of this. And so Oswald says, "Stop right there. Can you pile all of those items into a single bowl and just kind of make them into a wet mound of starch that I can eat with a spoon like I'm a death row prisoner on suicide watch? Is there a way that the bowl can play This Mortal Coil's It'll End in Tears album while I'm eating it at 2 a.m. in the morning in my darkened apartment, just kind of staring into the distance? If you could put my lunch in a blender and liquefy it and put it into a caulking gun and then inject it right into my femoral artery, even better. But until you invent the lunch gun, I would like a failure pile in a sadness bowl."
Oh, that's so grim.
That's right.
That's so grim.
So I mean, he does this in a kind of a very faux anger, resentment style. It's very funny. I didn't do it justice.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.